Welcome to today's Explainer. If you're a biology student, you're absolutely going to love this one because we're diving headfirst into the beautiful, messy, and frankly dramatic evolution of biological naming. We are looking at a true paradigm shift today. For literally hundreds of years, biology has operated under a set of rules that are currently being turned completely upside down by our modern understanding of evolution. Okay, let's run through today's syllabus quickly. We're going to cover the Linnaean legacy, taxonomy versus nomenclatural systems, the evolutionary disruption, plant naming conflicts, the phylogenetic solution, and then we'll wrap it all up with a clade identification pop quiz. Section 1. The Linnaean legacy, order in the natural world. To really understand this shift, we have to travel back to 1735. That's when the great Carl Linnaeus published Systema Naturae, essentially laying down the law for classifying living things. But, biology didn't just stop there. Charles Darwin shook the foundations of that system in 1859 with the theory of evolution. Then Hennig introduced phylogenetic systematics in 1965, and by the 1990s, scientists were already proposing a brand new set of rules called the Phylocode. The whole foundation of the Linnaean system is about organizing life into nested hierarchies, based entirely on observable physical characteristics. We all know the ranks from our early classes, right? Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Linnaeus gave us an incredibly useful way to categorize life based on what things looked like. But, as you'll see in just a moment, relying solely on physical traits eventually created a massive scientific headache once we actually figured out how life evolved. Section 2. Taxonomy versus nomenclatural systems, grouping versus naming. Before we watch that old hierarchical system breakdown, we really need to draw a sharp, distinct line between two crucial concepts that students often confuse. First is taxonomy. Taxonomy is the act of deciding who belongs in a group together. It's basically the scientific hypothesis. You look at a bunch of plants, analyze their genetics or morphology, and say, aha, these belong in a distinct group, or taxa. That's taxonomy. Nomenclature, on the other hand, is completely different. That is simply the set of rules we use to stick a label onto that group once we've defined it. Think of it as the legal framework. You do the taxonomy to find the group, and then you use nomenclature to officially name it. Keep that distinction in mind, because it's the nomenclatural rules, the actual naming rules, that are undergoing a revolution right now. Section 3. The evolutionary disruption. Common descent changes everything. Enter Charles Darwin, the ultimate disruptor. His theory of common descent threw an absolute wrench into Linnaeus's tidy little morphological boxes. The core conflict here is fascinating. Arbitrary ranks are clashing with actual evolutionary history. The Linnaean system requires you to assign a group to a subjective category, like a family. But common descent doesn't care about our neat human categories. Common descent is clade-based. It's all about grouping organisms strictly on an exclusive shared evolutionary ancestor, completely regardless of what they happen to look like on the outside. Smithsonian researcher Kevin DeCaros actually hit the nail on the head regarding this issue. He noted that taxonomists have found fundamental inconsistencies between concepts of taxa based on the principle of descent and the methods currently used to define taxon names. Basically, you simply cannot force the messy, continuous reality of evolution into rigid, predetermined categorical ranks without creating total chaos. The traditional naming rules were built for a static world, not a dynamic world of evolutionary branching. Section 4. Plant naming conflicts. The case of the missing mosses. Let's look at a real-world botanical example that's going to be super relevant to your studies. Take the classic mosses. Under the old rules, mosses were grouped together as bryophyta just because they looked alike. They lack a vascular system, they share ephemeral sporophytes. But modern cladistics revealed they deceived us. They're actually paraphyletic, meaning they aren't a true single evolutionary branch. So that forced a massive reclassification. On the flip side, Anthophyta, the flowering plants, were recognized as a true clade. They represent a monophyletic taxon of common descent. 300,000. That is the staggering number of species in the angiosperm, or flowering plants. It's a massive, highly diverse group, but it's entirely validated by modern evolutionary taxonomy. Why? Because despite their wildly different appearances, every single one of those 300,000 species genuinely shares an exclusive common ancestor. Section 5. The phylogenetic solution, a new nomenclatural world order. So, how do we fix this naming crisis where our old labels just don't march our new evolutionary trees? We look to a new nomenclatural world order. specifically something called a node-based definition. This is the heart of the paradigm shift. Instead of saying, this group is a family because I say so, we're now anchoring names directly to the branches of the evolutionary tree itself. We define a name strictly as the clade stemming from the most recent common ancestor of two or more specific organisms. The whole process becomes brilliantly objective. Step 1, identify the most recent common ancestor. Step 2, trace every single evolutionary descendant from that ancestor. Step 3, apply the name. By pointing directly to that ancestral node, the name of the group remains totally, completely stable. Even if later scientists bicker over whether this group should be called a class or a subclass, it just doesn't matter anymore. The rank is completely uncoupled from the name. When you compare traditional Linnaean naming right alongside modern phylogenetic naming, the key takeaway is the stark contrast in stability. Traditional naming has incredibly low stability because if a subjective rank changes, the name often has to change along with it. But phylogenetic naming, it has extremely high stability because the names are mathematically locked to a common ancestor. It frees us from those pointless historical debates about whether something is a superorder or a subfamily, and it focuses us purely on the biological reality of descent. Section 6. Clade Identification Pop Quiz. Let's test your knowledge. All right, consider this scenario. Let's say a plant group's rank suddenly changes from family to subfamily because paleontologists just dug up a new fossil that shifts our entire perspective on the hierarchy. Does its phylogenetically defined name change? Think carefully about what we just learned regarding stability and uncoupling ranks from names. The answer is a resounding no. The name remains identical. Because phylogenetic names are tied explicitly to the node of the common ancestor, changes in the Linnaean rank are completely 100% irrelevant. The name stays exactly the same. And that right there brilliantly illustrates the power, the elegance, and the strict scientific stability of node-based definitions. Which brings us to the ultimate question. The Linnaean hierarchy has served us incredibly well for a quarter of a millennium. But with phylogenetic naming clearly solving its most fatal flaws regarding evolutionary reality, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought for your next lab. Are we ready to fully evolve beyond the 18th century and abandon Linnaean ranks entirely? Think about that, and keep exploring the incredible tree of life.